Dad said, "Fair gifts for everyone," while my sister's kids unwrapped a PS5 and Lego. My daughter opened a $20 gift and teared up, so we walked out. I changed a few things that night, and by morning, I had 17 calls waiting after my parents woke up. Every family has that one kid who clearly ranks higher than the rest, and I just never thought my own child wouldn't even make the cut. Christmas morning hit at 9:47 a.m. and my parents' living room was thick with the smell of cinnamon and years of pretending everything was fine. My dad stood by the tree in his stupid reindeer sweater, the same one my mom bought him back in 2019, and the same one he wore every single year like it was part of his identity. This year, he lifted his coffee mug and announced that they'd made sure the gifts were fair for everyone, and the word fair should have been my cue to walk straight out the door. My sister Melissa was stretched out on the couch with her husband Dave beside her, and their 3 kids, Ethan, who was 10, Olivia, 8, and the youngest, Noah, 5, were practically buzzing with excitement. My daughter Emma was sitting quietly on the floor, also 8 years old, same age as Olivia, same grade, same school even, but somehow living in a completely different world. Mom clapped her hands and said we should start with the little ones, and Noah went first, shredding the wrapping paper like a feral animal to reveal a huge Lego Star Wars set, the exact big one priced at $159.99, which I knew because Emma had circled it in the catalog weeks earlier. Olivia was next, tearing open a massive box to find the newest iPad with a rose gold case. Easily $400 once you counted the extras. Then it was Ethan's turn, and he didn't even need to open it to know what it was because the box shape gave it away. A PlayStation 5. And he actually screamed while Dave high-fived him and Melissa filmed the whole thing on her phone, squealing about how they had the best parents ever. My mom and dad soaked in the praise like plants in sunlight, and all I could do was watch Emma, who was still smiling, still convinced her turn was coming, still believing those big boxes under the tree might somehow have her name on them. Back in November, I'd sent my mom a detailed, thoughtful list with art supplies because Emma loved drawing, a beginner jewelry making kit, books from her favorite series, and maybe even a tablet for digital art if they wanted to splurge, all within the same price range as the other kids, and my mom had replied with a simple, "Got it. We'll handle everything," which I stupidly trusted. As the pile under the tree disappeared, Ethan was setting up his PS5, Olivia was already downloading apps, Noah had Lego pieces scattered everywhere, and Emma just sat there waiting and watching. Eventually, my dad's mother, Grandma Helen, 79 and shuffling slowly, came over with a small envelope and handed it to Emma, telling her it was for her. Emma looked at me, I nodded, and she opened it carefully like she always did, trying not to tear anything, only to find a single $20 bill and a Snickers bar. That was it. She stared, flipped the envelope over, checked inside again, and I watched the confusion turn into understanding as her 8-year-old brain compared a PS5, an iPad, and a $150 Lego set to $20 and a gas station candy bar. Her eyes filled up, but she didn't cry or make a sound, just sat there holding the envelope while her cousins yelled around her, and my mom absent-mindedly told her to say thank you to her great-grandmother. Emma whispered thank you so quietly no one heard because they were too busy taking pictures of Ethan with his console. I stayed frozen, waiting for someone to notice, for my mom to suddenly say there was more, for my dad to pull out another gift, but nothing happened, not after 5 minutes or 10, and while everyone laughed and cleaned up wrapping paper, Emma still hadn't moved, the $20 bill resting in her lap, and the Snickers untouched. When she finally looked at me and asked if she'd done something wrong, something inside my chest broke, and I told her she hadn't before standing up and saying we were leaving. My mom acted shocked and complained about breakfast. My dad demanded an explanation because it was Christmas morning, but I didn't answer, just took Emma's hand as she grabbed her coat and left the envelope behind. At the door, I reminded my mom of her words about things being fair, wished her a Merry Christmas, and walked out. The drive home was silent, Emma staring out the window while I checked the mirror, almost wishing she'd cry because her emptiness felt worse. And when she mentioned Olivia's iPad and asked if Grandma hadn't gotten her list, all I could say was that she had. I nearly lost it on Route 9, especially when the Snickers turned out to be stale, but I told Emma we'd have our own Christmas at home with hot chocolate and a few presents we'd somehow missed. The truth was we'd already given her great gifts. art supplies, jewelry kits, books, and a used iPad we'd saved for. And she'd been grateful. But those were from us, and grandparents were supposed to be the ones who spoiled you unless you apparently weren't worth it. My wife Emily took one look at my face when we got home and knew it was bad. And after Emma went to her room to draw, I told Emily everything, from the PS5 to the iPad to the $20 and stale candy bar. And even she was stunned because while she knew my parents favored Melissa's kids, she never imagined it was this bad. My phone kept buzzing with calls and texts from my parents telling me I was being ridiculous and to come back and talk like adults. But I ignored them, because at that point there was nothing left to explain. "You're ruining Christmas over a misunderstanding," my mom texted, followed by, "Lily seemed fine with her gift. You're the one blowing this out of proportion." And when I showed the messages to Sarah, I said the words out loud just to hear how insane they sounded. Lily seemed fine, even though she'd asked me what she did wrong, which Sarah and I both knew. Sarah looked at me and asked quietly what we were going to do, and I glanced at the clock, 2:14 p.m. Before asking her if she remembered the beach trip I'd been planning for next summer, the Outer Banks family reunion thing. And when she said yes, I reminded her about the $15,000 house deposit, the one booked in my name on my card. And her eyes widened when I added the anniversary cruise for my parents that I'd been paying off in installments for $1,200 so far, also on my card. Then I mentioned Karen's car insurance, $180 a month under my account because her credit was shot, and finally the monthly help I sent my parents, $800 every single month for 3 years straight, which made Sarah go completely quiet. I'd always known the exact numbers because I tracked them privately in a spreadsheet I never shared, never said out loud, because saying it meant admitting I was the family ATM. But that night I finally did the math out loud, explaining that $800 times 36 months was $28,800, plus $180 times 14 months for Karen's insurance, another $2,520, plus the $4,200 cruise payments and the $15,000 beach deposit, grabbing a pen and writing it all on a napkin until the total stared back at us. Just over $50,000, and Sarah just stared while I said it plainly. I've given them 50 grand, and they gave my daughter a Snickers bar. When she asked what I was going to do, I opened my laptop and told her I was going to make things fair, and over the next 3 hours I did exactly that. First was the beach house, logging into VRBO and pulling up the original booking, an 8-bedroom monster that slept 20 and cost $22,000 for the week, with my $15,000 deposit and not a single family member having paid me back their share, so I canceled it, took the $2,000 cancellation hit, and scheduled a $13,000 refund to my card. Then immediately rebooked a different place, a 3-bedroom cottage with ocean views and private beach access for $8,500. Just me, Sarah, and Lily. Next was the cruise, a call to the travel agency where I explained I needed my payment method removed. Confirmed that although the booking was under my parents' names, it was my card covering the $4,200 already paid. And when they warned me it could lead to cancellation if the balance wasn't covered, I told them that wasn't my problem and had my card removed. Then came Karen's insurance, which felt oddly satisfying as I logged into my Geico account, found her 2019 Honda CR-V, and removed it from my policy so coverage would end at 12:01 a.m. on December 26th. Last was the monthly payments, opening my bank app, finding the recurring transfer labeled Mom and Dad Help, and canceling it without hesitation, confirming yes when the app asked if I was sure. By 2 a.m., it was all done, and when I leaned back and looked at the laptop and then my phone with its 23 missed calls and 47 unread texts, Sarah came downstairs, saw the screen, and said quietly that I really did it. I told her I'd finally made things fair, and when she asked if I was sure, all I could think about was Lily's face and that question that would never leave me, asking if she'd done something wrong. And I told Sarah I'd never been more sure of anything, which is why she kissed my forehead and said she was with me no matter what came next. I knew exactly what would come next, starting at 7:15 a.m. when my mom's card would decline at the pharmacy, then 8:30 when Karen would get the insurance cancellation notice, then 9 o'clock when my dad would try to access the cruise booking and find nothing, and by 10 o'clock my phone would be blowing up, but at 2 a.m. On December 26th the house was quiet, Lily asleep and hopefully dreaming of waves and sand, and I was awake but lighter, because for the first time in years I wasn't carrying them anymore. I wasn't the ATM or the backup plan. I was just a dad protecting his kid like I should have all along. At 7:14 a.m., I was making pancakes when it started, chocolate chips for Lily, blueberries for Sarah, a normal peaceful morning, my phone silent on the counter because I'd turned off notifications for everyone except work and Sarah's family. Though I knew across town my mom was standing at CVS about to have her card declined. And as I flipped a perfectly golden pancake, the first voicemail notification popped up at 7:16, which I ignored while Lily shuffled and asking for extra chocolate chips, eating happily. Because for her nothing was wrong anymore. By 7:23 there was another voicemail from my dad, and when Sarah came down and saw my phone light up, she just said it was starting, pouring her coffee as we exchanged a look that needed no words. The texts came next, muted but visible. My mom asking why her card wasn't working and telling me it was urgent because my dad needed his medication. While outside a bright red cardinal landed on the bird feeder Lily and I had filled together the day before, the calm of our kitchen clashing perfectly with the chaos in my phone. At 8:34 Karen jumped in, demanding to know why her insurance was canceled and what I'd done. While I was already outside helping Lily roll snowballs for a snowman, Sarah watching from the deck with her coffee, my phone buzzing again and again in my pocket as Karen kept texting, saying it wasn't funny, and for once I let it buzz. I helped Emma roll the base of the snowman, big and lopsided and absolutely perfect. While my phone kept buzzing with messages popping up one after another, my mom asking questions, my dad trying to calm everyone down, and my sister Melissa flat out saying there was no mistake because the message clearly showed the primary account holder had removed her vehicle, meaning I had removed it. Emma proudly held up 2 sticks she'd found and asked if they were good for arms, and I told her they were perfect, watching her smile while the group chat exploded with confusion and denial. My mom insisted I'd never do something like that. Melissa told them to check the cruise booking, and then the chat went dead silent for 6 full minutes until my dad finally typed that the cruise was gone, completely gone, no reservation found, and I pressed the carrot nose into the snowman as Emma giggled and decided he needed a hat. I sent her inside to grab one of Emily's old beanies and stood there in the cold staring at my phone while messages rolled in accusing me of canceling everything and begging me to call because this had gone too far, and instead of responding, I watched Emma run back out with the hat, laughing. At 9:47 a.m., I finally sent one message to the family group chat, telling them they'd said things needed to be fair for everyone, and now I was making sure they were. Then I muted the conversation again as 14 messages came in within 30 seconds. Emily looked over my shoulder and said they were probably going to show up, and I told her we'd finish the snowman and then watch Frozen, because that was the plan. They pulled into the driveway at 11:23 a.m. My dad's Buick rolling in as my mom climbed out already crying and my dad's face red with anger. And I watched from the window before telling Emma to go play upstairs with her art supplies, because this was grown-up stuff, which she accepted without question. Emily stood beside me, and I told her we'd handle it together as the doorbell rang, followed by pounding knocks and my dad demanding I open the door. When I did, he tried to push past me, and I stood my ground, telling him we could talk right there, on the porch, while my mom cried harder and asked what they'd done wrong. I let the silence sit until my dad finally said this was about the gifts, incredulous that I'd canceled a cruise and insurance and everything else over Christmas presents. And I corrected him calmly, saying it was about a $20 bill and a stale candy bar, while her cousins got $600 each. My mom opened her mouth and closed it again, and I reminded them those were their words about fairness, pointed out that Emma and Olivia were the same age, same grade, same school, and Olivia got an iPad. And when my mom said they didn't know what to buy Emma, I showed her the text from November 15th where I'd sent a list, and she'd replied with a heart and said they'd handle it. She stared at her phone and whispered that she forgot, and all I said was that she forgot, letting it hang there, before my dad tried to shift gears and argue that canceling the cruise was too far because it was their anniversary trip and they would have paid me back someday, which I shut down by pointing out they'd never paid me back for anything, including the $15,000 beach house deposit that no one had contributed to, not Melissa, not anyone. My mom reached for my arm, and I stepped back. And when she said they loved Emma, I asked simple questions they couldn't answer: her birthday, her favorite color, what she wanted to be when she grew up, and after the silence I told them the answers. Purple, an artist, the same thing she'd been saying for 3 years, which was why I'd suggested art supplies. I told them they didn't know her, didn't see her, and I was done pretending that was okay. And when my dad accused me of cutting off the whole family, I told him I was protecting my daughter, which is what fathers do, and I closed the door. They stood on the porch another 10 minutes before leaving, and when Emily asked if I was okay, I told her no, but I would be. The next 3 weeks were chaos, starting with Melissa calling 17 times the first week, leaving angry, pleading, and threatening voicemails about her credit and her job and how this was illegal. Even though it wasn't, it was my policy and my choice, and she eventually found new insurance that cost way more because bad credit works like that. My mom texted every day saying they were sorry about the gift situation and accusing me of tearing the family apart while claiming my dad wasn't sleeping, and I didn't respond once. In week 2, my dad sent a long formal email that read like a business memo, acknowledging the gift disparity but calling my response disproportionate and proposing a so-called fair compromise that involved restoring Melissa's insurance, rebooking the cruise, and rejoining the beach trip, which just proved they still didn't understand, so I ignored that too. By week 3, the extended family piled on. My Aunt Diane called, Uncle Ron messaged, my cousin Jake texted asking if I was good, and the story had already been rewritten as me overreacting about Christmas gifts and punishing everyone, with no mention of the $50,000 or the $20 bill or Emma's face, just that I was being dramatic. Then on January 14th, a random Tuesday, my phone rang, and it was Grandma Helen, my dad's mom, the same woman who'd handed Emma that envelope, and even though I almost let it go to voicemail, something made me answer. She told me she needed to say something and asked me to listen, and after a pause she said she didn't know, that my mom had told her Emma's gift was taken care of and handed her the envelope to give her, and she thought there was more inside, gift cards or something else. I sat down as she explained that when she realized what was actually in it she felt sick, her voice breaking as she said she'd given her great-granddaughter gas station candy for Christmas, and I could hear the shame in her words. Grandma? I said into the phone, and she told me she'd called my mother the very next day to ask what happened, and my mother had said she simply ran out of time for Lily's gift, ran out of time for one child. And I could hear Grandma Ruth's voice crack as she said she told her she should be ashamed. She explained they argued, that my father called and told her to stay out of it, but she refused because she couldn't and wouldn't pretend it was okay, admitting she hadn't realized how deep it went and that she should have spoken up at Christmas when she saw Lily's face, but had been too shocked in the moment. I told her she hadn't known, and that mattered. And when she said she wanted to make it right and asked if she could see Lily and take her somewhere special, I said I'd talk to Sarah, of course, and before hanging up she told me she'd been watching this family for 79 years and I was the first one who'd ever stood up, warning me not to let them break me. I sat there in the quiet after the call for a long time, realizing maybe not everyone was lost, and that night I told Sarah about it, pointing out that Grandma Ruth was the only one who apologized for Lily herself, not for being inconvenienced, not for hurt feelings, but for Lily. Sarah nodded and asked what I wanted to do, and I said I'd give her one chance, just one, and if she blew it she was out too, though I didn't think she would, and Sarah squeezed my hand and reminded me this changed nothing with my parents or with Karen, which I agreed was already done. We sat together in a comfortable silence while my phone buzzed again with another family group chat message I didn't bother reading, because it didn't matter anymore when I had my wife, my daughter, and maybe one grandmother worth keeping, which felt like more than enough. Grandma Ruth came over on January 19th carrying a real gift this time, not an envelope, wrapped in purple paper, Lily's favorite color, which she somehow knew, and at the door she admitted she'd done research, called Sarah the week before, and asked questions. Inside the box was a professional-grade art set, Prismacolor pencils, 150 colors, the good ones, and Lily's eyes went wide as she whispered that these were the ones YouTubers use, prompting Grandma Ruth to admit she'd watched the videos, even the girl with the pink hair who recommended them. Lily looked at me, then at Grandma Ruth, whispered thank you, and wrapped her in a hug so tight Grandma closed her eyes and held on, tears slipping down her cheek. Later they sat at the kitchen table together while Lily drew and Grandma asked real questions about what she was making, listening as Lily explained it was a dragon who protected a village and that his name was Gerald, which made Grandma smile and call it a very dignified name. sending Lily into giggles. Sarah and I watched from the living room, and she quietly said Grandma was good with her, and I admitted I worried my parents might try to use her as a way back in, but Grandma Ruth had already shut that down, telling me, in her words, that she was 79 years old and didn't have time for their nonsense, which made Sarah laugh. Before she left, Grandma pulled me aside and said she wanted me to know what was happening with the rest of the family, glancing toward the door to make sure Lily wasn't listening, and explained my mother had been calling everyone, spinning a story about me having a breakdown and punishing them over nothing. I told her I figured, but she said it wasn't working as well as my mother hoped, that people were asking questions and she'd been telling the truth, insisting she was already in the middle after handing Lily that envelope, and that setting the record straight was the least she could do. When I asked what people were saying, she told me it was mixed, but that Uncle Dennis had called her asking if the $50,000 part was true, and when she confirmed it, he went quiet and said that changed things, which she predicted meant I'd hear from him soon. She was right, because February brought new tactics, starting with Uncle Dennis calling to say he'd heard a different version from Grandma Ruth and needed to apologize, admitting my mother had told him I overreacted to a small gift mix-up and never mentioned the money or the years of support. I asked him what he would have done if he'd known, and after some silence he admitted that was fair and said he wasn't joining whatever they were doing, that he believed me and was sorry, and while he didn't call again, he also didn't attack me, which felt like a small win. Aunt Patricia tried next with a different strategy, showing up unannounced at my office and asking the receptionist to calm me down, and when I met her she hugged me like nothing was wrong, told me I looked tired, and said my mother was falling apart, to which I pointed out that ambushing me at work probably wasn't the solution. She talked about my father's blood pressure and Karen struggling with insurance costs, and I told her plainly that they hurt my daughter and I was just balancing the scales, brushing off her claim that Lily would forget one bad Christmas by reminding her I still remembered being 10 when she gave Karen a bicycle and handed me a book about manners. Her face went pale when I said it was exactly the same thing, that Karen was always the favorite, and now her kids were too while mine was an afterthought, and I walked back to the elevator and told her we were done as the doors closed on her stunned expression. On March 3rd, Lily turned 9, and we kept her birthday party small with her 3 best friends, Sarah's parents, and Grandma Ruth, no one else from my side except her, and Lily never once asked about her other grandparents, a silence that said more than any question could because kids always know. Grandma Ruth gave her a sterling silver charm bracelet with a tiny artist's palette and promised to add a new charm every year to represent who Lily was becoming, and Lily hugged her so hard I worried she'd knock her over. Later, while Lily played, Grandma sat beside me and mentioned my mother had sent a gift and asked for the address, that I'd said no, and that she'd handed it to Grandma instead and asked her to deliver it, and when I asked what it was, Grandma Ruth shook her head and said she honestly didn't know. She asked me not to open it, and after thinking about it for a minute, I decided I'd keep it for now, tucked away, figuring if Lily ever asked about them someday, I'd make that call then. And Grandma Ruth nodded like she understood completely before saying, gently, that for what it was worth my mother seemed different lately, quieter and less defensive. I asked if that was supposed to make me forgive her, and Grandma shook her head and said no. She was just telling me what she saw. On March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, I got a call at work from my mom's number and almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer, and it was my dad on the other end, his voice shaking as he said it was my mother and she'd collapsed. My stomach dropped as I asked what happened, and he told me they were at St. Mary's and the doctors thought it might be her heart, and when I asked if she was okay, he said they were running tests and begged me to come because she needed her family. I thought about 3 months of silence and manipulation and finally told him I'd come to see what was happening and nothing more. I drove to the hospital not for her, but for myself, because I needed to know if this was real or just another tactic. And when I got there, my dad jumped up in the waiting room like I'd saved him, but I stopped him short and told him not to read into it before heading to room 412. Mom was in the bed hooked up to monitors and looked smaller somehow. And when she saw me, her eyes filled with tears, and she said I came. And I told her plainly that I came to see if she was actually sick, letting the words hang there until a doctor walked in and explained it wasn't a heart attack, but stress-induced angina, treatable, though she needed to reduce stress. After he left, Mom looked at me hopefully, and I told her I was glad she was okay, truly, But when she asked me to stay, I said no, explaining that the doctor said to reduce stress, and this conversation would only do the opposite. She begged to at least talk about Lily and Christmas, but I told her not today and walked out. In the hallway, my dad accused me of being heartless for leaving, and I stopped, turned, and told him I wasn't heartless. I was a father, and Lily came first, something he never understood, before leaving the hospital. I called Grandma Ruth from the car, and she already knew, telling me my dad said I'd been cold. And when she asked what I thought, I said I went to make sure Mom was okay, and she was, which Grandma said was more than most would do, adding that my mother still hoped this would blow over even though it wouldn't. April passed quietly after that with no more guilt trips or family pressure, just silence, and I finally started planning the beach trip for real, the 3-bedroom cottage in the Outer Banks for the first week of July, just me, Sarah, and Lily. Grandma Ruth started coming over twice a month, and she and Lily had a standing art date every other Saturday. And one day, I overheard Lily asking if Grandma Patricia was still sad, and if it was because Daddy didn't visit anymore, or because of Christmas. And Grandma Ruth gently told her none of it was Lily's fault, and that sometimes grown-ups show you who you are to them, adding that Lily's daddy was a smart man. Lily admitted she missed how things used to be even if they didn't really see her, and Grandma hugged her and told her that having people who truly see you is what matters, and I stepped back and let them have that moment. On May 15th, Sarah's birthday, we went out to dinner, just the two of us, while Grandma Ruth babysat, and over dessert Sarah asked if I had any regrets about Christmas and everything after, and after really thinking about it, I told her I regretted that it came to this and losing most of my family. But I didn't regret protecting Lily or teaching her that she mattered. Sarah smiled and said that was a good answer before joking that her only regret was not telling my mother off herself, which made me laugh as the rain started outside and everything inside felt warm. And even though we weren't fully healed 5 months later, we were getting there together. On July 3rd at 6:47 a.m., we loaded the car in the dark, Lily half asleep and clutching her sketchbook like a teddy bear, while Sarah packed enough snacks for a small army. And when she asked if I was ready, I told her I'd been ready for 7 months. The 6-hour drive flew by with Lily sleeping, drawing, and asking if we were there yet about 47 times. And when we finally pulled up to the cottage, she went quiet and whispered that she could see the ocean from the house, unbuckling before I even stopped the car. The first day was the good kind of chaos as Lily ran straight to the beach without even taking off her shoes, sprinting across the sand to the water's edge, while Sarah and I watched from the deck and agreed it was worth every penny and every fight. That night we ate grilled shrimp, corn on the cob, and boxed mac and cheese outside with no phones, no drama, no family group chat, just waves and laughter. And on day 3 we went kayaking with Lily sitting in front of me, spotting dolphins twice, and hearing her declare it the best trip ever, even better than Disney. When she asked if we could do this every year, I thought about all the money and effort I'd poured into people who never appreciated it, and told her yes, we could. And by day 5, when Lily begged to attend an art class on the pier taught by a local artist every Thursday, I realized we'd already built something better than what we'd lost. I dropped Lily off and sat on a nearby bench where I could still see her through the window, happily painting, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number that I almost ignored. But I answered anyway and heard Karen's voice asking me not to hang up, saying she'd begged Grandma Ruth for my number and just wanted 30 seconds. I told her she had them, and she rushed out an apology, not a vague one either, but a real one, saying she was sorry for Lily's gift, for not speaking up when Mom handed her that envelope, for letting her own kids have everything while Lily got nothing, and for calling me dramatic when I was just being a good dad. I watched Lily laugh as she painted and asked Karen why now, and she admitted it took her 7 months to realize I wasn't punishing anyone. I was protecting my daughter, and she said she wasn't asking for forgiveness, only that I know she finally sees it. I told her Lily was doing great. She said she was glad, and after a quiet moment I said goodbye and hung up, not blocking her and not saving the number either, just letting it exist and move on. On the last morning of the trip, Lily woke up early and found me on the deck watching the sunrise, climbed into my lap, and told me she didn't want to leave, and I told her I didn't either, but promised we'd come back, which she made me promise twice. She watched the waves for a while before asking if I was still mad at Grandma Patricia, and I explained that I wasn't mad anymore, but I was still hurt. Breaking it down the way you do for a kid, like the difference between the pain from falling off a bike and the time it takes to heal. And she seemed to get it, snuggling closer and saying she liked Grandma Ruth because she was teaching her how to draw faces. We watched the sunrise together, just father and daughter, and it felt exactly right. The months rolled by after that. August into September and October, Lily started 4th grade, and her art teacher called her exceptionally talented. Grandma Ruth came every other Saturday like clockwork. The charm bracelet kept growing with a seashell for the beach and a paintbrush for her art. Sarah got promoted, I got a raise, and we started a real vacation fund with Hawaii on the list because Lily wanted to see volcanoes. I didn't hear from my parents directly, only through Grandma Ruth, who said Mom was quieter and doing better. Dad had retired early, Karen was managing, and everyone was surviving without me just fine, like I'd always known they could. Thanksgiving came, and there were 6 of us at the table. Me, Sarah, Lily, Sarah's parents, and Grandma Ruth. And Lily said grace, thanking God for the food, for her family, for Grandma Ruth in art class, and for the beach trip. And as I looked around, I realized this was my family now, the people who showed up and saw my daughter, because blood doesn't make family, love does. On Christmas morning 1 year later, Lily woke us at 6:30 a.m. to a tree full of thoughtful gifts, an art tablet, books, a jewelry kit, and when Grandma Ruth arrived at noon, she brought a leather art portfolio with Lily's name embossed on it, telling her every artist needs one, which made Lily cry happy tears. My phone buzzed again with an unknown number, a message from my parents wishing us Merry Christmas, apologizing, and saying they were there if I ever wanted to talk. And I read it a few times, didn't reply, but didn't delete it either, leaving the door cracked just enough for the future to decide. Sarah asked if I was okay, and I told her honestly that I was. And Lily ran over excitedly showing me her new tablet and asking if I'd draw with her later, hugging me tight and telling me she loved me. And as I looked at my daughter, my wife, and my grandmother, I knew this was my real family, not the one I was born into, but the one I built. What I learned from that Christmas is simple. Family isn't blood, it's choice. It's who shows up, who pays attention, who remembers your favorite color. And when my parents gave my daughter $20 and a stale candy bar, while I'd given them tens of thousands over the years, I finally stopped carrying what wasn't mine to carry and made things fair, not out of revenge, but out of love for my daughter and the family that earned my loyalty. Some bridges burn, some doors close, and sometimes that's exactly how it's supposed to be. And when Lily once asked why we don't see Grandma Patricia anymore, I told her that sometimes people show you who you really are to them, and you have to believe them, which she accepted without argument, because kids understand more than we think. Next Christmas, Lily wants to volunteer at an animal shelter to help dogs and cats find homes, and that kindness, that generosity, that heart is who she is, not because of my parents, but in spite of them, and I couldn't be prouder.